on IEDs, the terrorist weapon of choice. I want to thank so many of you. We're trying to expand our capability right now in response to so many people that have registered. I think we're way over 500 now. And none of this would be possible if it weren't for the fact that this is being hosted by the Homeland Security Network. The Homeland Security Network was established 6 months ago to provide Homeland Security first responders with a live interactive network that they can really exchange information and connect the dots, which is far too often what doesn't happen. That organization that you can check out at homelandsecuritynet.com. You've already been signed up to it as a member of this broadcast if your background checked out and the vetting was in accordance with our rules that you have to be an agency member. The webinar, of course, is produced by SSI, and I'll be introducing the presenter in just a minute. But before that, I'd like to thank our sponsor, which is NITEC Incorporated. NITEC has been generous in providing us with the funding to be able to give this to you for free. And John Dimitrovitz, who's the VP of Engineering Operations for NITEC, will be speaking to you in a minute about what they do. They've been developing integrated sensor systems for airborne and ground weapon systems for more than 20 years. With sponsorship and support provided by the U.S. Army Counter-Mine Division and JIEDDO, John was the program manager and team leader for the development and operational evaluation of the NITEC GPR-based Husky-mounted protection system. He and NITEC are committed to improving the technology to counter and defeat the evolving IED threats. John, welcome. Please take the mic.
Thank you for the introduction, Henry. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is John Dimitrovitz, and I'm the VP of Engineering Ops here at NITEC. A little bit about what NITEC's role is on the war on IEDs and the IED defeat programs. First and foremost, NITEC's business is saving lives. We happen to be the producer of one of the most successful countermeasures that's currently being used in operations, primarily in Afghanistan, to identify, detect, and neutralize buried explosive hazards. And these hazards do include various types of IEDs and industrial type AT mines. Our ground penetrating radar system, that is our flagship product, it is battle proven, and we're very proud of the success that it lies down there. We can go to the next slide. Things about the very valuable sponsorship and support that we get from our primary customers. This project, this technology has been in development for about a decade, courtesy of the funding that was provided by the U.S. Army Countermine Division, plus the program manager for countermine and explosive ordnance disposal. In addition, some of the very important and valuable users of the equipment who have been using it quite successfully are the United States Marine Corps, Canadian Ground Forces, and we're getting a significant amount of interest from other NATO-friendly ISAF forces who are also have firm plans to acquire this technology. And in addition to that, our very important source of funding to continue the development is from JIDO and the REF here in the U.S. Go to the next slide. Some of our core capabilities. First and foremost, we produce and develop mine detection technology, primarily ground penetrating radars, but we also provide and integrate very capable metal detectors and completely integrated systems on both vehicles and small man-packable robots. In addition to that, we have a very broad and diverse product line of security type and EOD products, primarily to manage entry control points, personnel safety equipment, initiators, things like that. I'll go into that just a little bit later. And on top of that, we are an engineering and development company, and all of the system design, including the signal processing, our very high-tech algorithm development, plus the training and sustainment, that's all run by the folks at NITEC out of our main facility here in Dulles, Virginia. You can go to the next slide. A little bit about technology. I mentioned this before, our Husky mine detection system. This particular system has been very, very effective, primarily in Afghanistan with the U.S. forces. There are well over 200 systems that are running routes today as we speak. One of the great advantages of this technology over the other sensors that are being utilized in theater is the fact that it has a very high probability of detection versus low and even non-metallic threats. And this is, again, our flagship product line. Next. Our R-Visor, I touched on this before. The same technology in the large vehicle mounted systems, but installed on a man-packable robot. Some of the utilities and uses for this particular system or technology is mainly for the types of missions where a significant standoff is required between the suspected area that the explosive hazard or the buried object is located, and where the operator would need to stand. This is a standoff detection device. We can go to the next slide. Support the humanitarian demining community by providing demonstrator equipment that are used in war-torn regions of the world, for example, Angola, Somalia, and Cambodia. And there are firm plans to continue to deploy in humanitarian efforts around the world in the coming years. If we can go to the next slide. Our EOD products, primarily our vehicle scan. Well, this is a very capable entry control point type detection system. The picture that you're looking at right now is the static installation where it's installed permanently. A couple of things that this system does, it does have cameras, and it basically scans the underneath of the vehicle. It also has license plate recognition capability and the ability to have many of these systems networked together in a central control room for a complete integrated security system. If we can go to the next slide. This is the same product, only in a mobile version. And this has much more flexibility than the static installation because you have the opportunity to move your entry control point from point A to point B, and you can also set up temporary entry control point scanning systems that are also integrated and centralized in the same fashion as the static installation. We can go to the next slide. Right, a few of the comments that we've gotten from the field, some of the decision makers in the U.S. Deployment of the NITEC equipment has been very successful in Afghanistan. A few comments from Lieutenant General Metz, who was the director of the Joint IED Defeat Organization. He did call out the NITEC technology as a very successful game changer, and we are making a difference in the war. If we can go to the next slide. Right, a few of the that we have going forward is, one, NITEC is committed to remain a leader in the IED defeat mission. We will be continuing to develop and improve our technology because we do understand the threat continues to evolve and the technology needs to evolve along with it. We are focused on getting this enhanced capability to the warfighters, and there are many programs running in parallel in the background that are going to get even more and higher performance products, including increased portability and man-packability type products into the hands of the warfighter. And also, we are very committed in providing best value to all of our customers, U.S. government, foreign military, foreign governments, others. But with that, Henry, I really thank you for giving me time to.
John, I want to thank you. Wonderful and very important products that you have in this fight that we have against explosives, one of the toughest fights there. And that's what the presentation's about. I'm very pleased to introduce the CEO of SSI, Solomon Bradman, who has taken part in more than 60 trainings of SWAT teams throughout the country. Participants from everywhere have come to learn how to deal with explosive devices. And today he's going to be presenting the webinar and giving you the latest on what there is to know on IEDs. So you take the mic.
Right, thank you, Henry. Thank you very much for that. And John, thank you very much for the sponsor for NITEC and, of course, for the great work you guys are doing around the world protecting people. I want to take this opportunity and thank everybody. Really a great amount of participants today, so I really want to thank everybody to take time from their busy schedule to join us and to give us the time to learn more. I just want to give you a quick idea of who we have listening today, and then we'll move into the program where we have over 500 registrants, and not to mention all of them. I won't mention any names, but obviously I recognize a lot of the people and professionals that we have trained throughout the last 7 years through our training programs. And some of the agencies that are registered are the Department of Defense, the TSA, obviously different parts of the Department of Homeland Security. We also have some participants from the Federal Aviation Administration, so I have to be careful what I say there. I'm happy to see we have people right here at where our main offices are. So we have some officers from the Miami Police Department. Members of the NYPD are also in attendance today. And as you can imagine, with the amount of people registered, I can't name all of them, but practically a who's who of all the folks out there that really do the job of protecting us here in the United States, from federal, state, local agencies. And I do want to mention, I won't mention the names, but we have a handful of very high-end private sector security professionals from major Fortune 100 companies that are listening today as well. So thank you for that, and we'll go ahead and get started with the program. Obviously, there's a lot of material to cover, and we won't be able to cover it all, but hopefully you'll get an idea of some of the things that we're teaching across the country, and preferably take an interest in some of our programs as we provide these to different agencies across the country. I started with this slide. I'm not going to go into the case study of some of the different attacks or attempted attacks that we've had to our country in the last few years, but I thought it's appropriate that with all the news coming from Iraq and Afghanistan, and the words IED and VBIED be synonymous almost to something that's going on halfway around the world, that we sometimes need to be reminded about the threat right here in the United States. When we look at this attack that luckily was foiled in 2010 at Times Square, what I look at, and it's not all the details of the attack itself, but what I look at is that there's plenty and no shortage of people right here in this country that want to do damage to us, to citizens, to Americans, to people that are just innocent people, families, our children, and obviously, we're the people that are trying to make a difference out there. And I think that these threats can definitely not be taken lightly. Actually, in doing some research for this presentation, the more I look into it, the more amazing I see the commitments of these attackers and how they travel halfway around the world and train with Al-Qaeda in different training camps, and the dedication that they put into the attacks. And I can tell you that when they do perform these attacks like this one in Times Square, their objective is definitely not to be caught and not to be successful. So lucky for us, this did not turn into a worse event. I want to mention also the Northwest Airlines Flight 253 again. We're talking about the theme of today, which is the use of explosives. So That goes with the Times Square bombing, which he was trying to put together an improvised IED. Now we're looking at Flight 253. We're looking at an American company, Northwest Airlines, obviously flying over an American city, Detroit, with American passengers. And again, all innocent victims on the airplane just trying to get from point A to point B. I know I just mentioned that we have members from the TSA listening, so I don't want to upset anybody, but when you think that this attack is in 2009, which is a long time past 9/11, and that the terrorist was able to get on board with explosives, and luckily for us, truly the device failed. He was able to get pretty much everything on board he needed. When he tried to get the device to go off, only got the primer up, but did not get the main explosives detonated. So the passengers basically jumped the terrorist, and that's kind of what foiled the attack. Bad engineering by their part, or a work mistake. And luckily, passengers, they were sharp and did what they had to do. That said, we all remember Jenna Napolitano said that the system worked after this. So I'm planning my next webinar to be on airport security, and I think we can cover a lot there and see where we are today as where we were at 9/11. I wanted to put this slide in. Everybody's aware of the initial attack on the World Trade Center, and the reason I thought this was important is because everybody talks about post 9/11 and post 9/11, but bad guys have been around long before 9/11, and this should have been maybe even more of an eye-opener than it was, but a perfect example of an improvised explosive device, again in the form of a IED. They used urea fertilizer with some gas agents, and although they did not succeed in what they wanted to do, which was to take the towers down, I think at the end of the day you can see from the picture and the damage that they did have a bit of success with that attack. Again, a precursor and maybe a little bit of writing on the wall, you can say, on unfortunately what we know now is the future. I want to also make it clear that we're not just talking about radical Islam today. We're talking about people who want to cause damage and are using explosives to do that. So here's a perfect example of, not a radical Islamist who obviously had a beef or gripe and unfortunately was successful in the attack, and a real unfortunate attack with a lot of victims. It's just a shame, but it just goes to show you again, not Iraq, not Afghanistan, but right here in the backyard. And if you want to go in even further, you can say, not LA and not New York. So it keeps in mind that this is a threat we have to be concerned with, not only in major cities across the country, but really all our cities across the country. One of the biggest things I've learned, as Henry said, I've been working very closely with some of the top professionals in the world in both special operations and explosives for 7 years now. And, I think at the end of the day, we've come to the conclusion that all of you working for different agencies need to really take a look at your SOPs and your use of force policies. And we're not saying to take a look at these, after there's an unfortunate event. I think that, the time to do that is right now, because I'm convinced that the biggest difference of what we're dealing with today that's probably going to change your SOPs and, and your use of force policies is either the possible presence or the presence of explosives. That's, at the end of the day, that's the biggest game changer. And, that's something that needs to be looked at. I think that everybody listening today is very clear about their policies, and especially the use of force policies. If somebody's pointing a .45 at their head, what they need to do and what they're allowed to do and what they can do and what they can't do. But there's a tremendous gray area. I'm not saying I have all these answers, but I can tell you that there's a lot that can be done within the policies and also small tweaking to the policies to conclude, when your life is in danger and when it isn't. And, if you're in a room where there are explosives in the room and you happen to be in that room, that I think it's easy to determine that your life's in danger. And if you're in a room with, a potential bad guy, at that point I think the most interesting thing to me would be the explosives even more than the person in the room. So those are things you have to think about and how that would be handled, whether it's a suicide bomber with a vest on, or maybe just explosives in a bomb lab in the vicinity that could cause lethal damage would be something to be concerned about. Another thing we talk about in our trainings, which is important to deal with explosives aside from proper concealment and cover and distance and the things that we're probably all pretty much aware of, is having to have a three-dimensional view. You may very likely be in a room with nobody in it and the room's completely cleared and there's nothing interesting in the room, but there may be explosives in the room above you or in the room below you, which will put you in a situation where you're just in danger as if you were in the room with the explosive. So then again, like I said, I don't have all the answers, but these are things that are going to have to be taken into consideration. I also want to say that absolutely, positively at any time that you don't need to deal with explosives, if you can, call the bomb techs and the professionals and the equipment and the robots and anything that can deal with that. That's obviously the way to go in as much distance as possible, but regardless of what your function is, if you're a first responder, whether you're in patrol or special operations or SWAT, or the first ones on the scene, or for that matter, even paramedics and medics, things of that nature, you just don't know when the situation may call for you having to be in the same proximity as a suspicious package and explosives, or in a room, or even in a building for that matter. They may have explosives at some point, maybe at one floor or above floor, like I was saying before. So we believe the game changer is the presence, or in that case, the possible presence of explosives. It'll probably have the most meaningful change, your SOPs, your use of force policies, and obviously in your tactics of how you're going to deal with the situation. I just put this in today just to show you that the threat exists. Again, not Iraq, not Afghanistan, maybe not even terrorists, but a car bomb just 4 days ago in Colombia. So that's a very current incident of a IED using improvised explosive devices. I'm not going to read you the slides. All this information of all these cases are available on the internet, so I'm just going to point out the relevant, what are relevant to the points I'm trying to make today. In this particular case was a IED car bomb in Mexico, and even the reporter who reported this for CNN, if you look at just the bottom of the slide, it said it's like an act of terrorism. What we find today is the word terrorism, which I always associated with a group or a person wanting, some kind of political change or gain. But now, if you listen to the news in the evening, you also hear the word narco-terrorism. So now the understanding is if it's criminals, because narco-trafficking, as far as I'm concerned, is a criminal event, but they're using terrorist tactics to achieve their goal, which is not necessarily political, I think it kind of starts graying the area about the term terrorist. So if we're going to include criminal threats that use terrorist-type tactics and tools, I think it's going to increase the amount of terrorists we're actually looking for, and you could see a large cross-section of criminals starting to take on these tactics. So, like I said, what we're concerned about is how we're going to deal with these explosives, and regardless of who has them. At the end of the day, we're dealing with bad guys, regardless of what group they're associated with and what they're trying to achieve. In this particular case, and I put this up, I couldn't even come, there were so many cases, unbelievable. There were so many cases that had to do with the use of explosives in an attempt to rob banks. That I thought I'd have to put it in here, because here we go with traditional bank robbery, and already the use of explosives is becoming more and more common. Not to make light of the situation, there was a very bad incident in Erie, Pennsylvania, where unfortunately a pizza delivery man ended up getting killed wearing a collar bomb, which is a very very strange case, by the way, but it's worth looking into. And interesting enough, Ben Stiller is actually doing a comedy in August called 30 Minutes or Less, which is really a takeoff of that event. So I'd like to find it interesting to see how they can take an event like that and turn it into a comedy, but I guess it has a lot of elements that could be seen as funny. But That said, in LA and in other places in the country, explosives have been used, and in the attempt to rob banks, so we're just talking about standard criminal operations. Again, standard criminal operations that maybe standard SOPs would not apply because of the use of explosives. This is an incident that really didn't get a whole lot of publicity. I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that we've had a suicide terror attack with a suicide vest here in this country. Actually, it was just outside the Oklahoma football game, a seniors football game. In this particular case, again, improvised explosives, TATP, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but it was a young gentleman, Joel Henricks, who put together a device, and luckily he blew himself up outside, just outside the stadium with 84,000 spectators. The only thing we can conclude from this, according to FBI, said that he was working alone, not associated to any group, which is usually what comes out of these investigations shortly after the attack. I mean, whether you want to call him a domestic terrorist or whether he was radicalized, at the end of the day, he was able to more than likely get all the information he needed to create a working device, and probably got all that information from the internet, which we'll also get to the importance of the internet. And some folks also don't realize that during the investigation of the Columbine case, that they found over 99 explosive devices, over 300 pieces of explosive material that was also collected as evidence in the case. And the only thing I can say there is just imagine if they really knew what they were doing with the explosives, how much more damage. I mean, not that they didn't cause enough damage, but can you imagine 99 explosive devices if they would have even gotten, 25% of this to work? What the difference in the attack would have been like. In this particular slide, because we are talking about the United States, I wanted to put up some of the things that we're dealing with here. So I just want to show that we absolutely have no shortage of potential problems when it comes to dealing with extremists and people, again, people that just want to cause harm and problems, and have the ability, again, and with the internet, to create explosive devices. So there's no shortage. We don't need to look abroad to see that we have a problem that we have to deal with right here in the United States. So, in conclusion to this first part, before we get into the actual explosives, we believe that the biggest concern, especially for the people dealing with these problems in the tip of the spear, I'm not talking about the investigators now, I'm talking more about the first responders and special operations groups and patrol, that what I would be looking for mainly is the motivation of the individuals that are perpetrating the attack. I mean, if they have the motivation, regardless of whether it's Al-Qaeda, a right-wing extremist, or an El Salvadorian gang member or an LA gang member, if they have the motivation and they're willing to kill and be killed, the problem exists, and then explosives just comes in as a tool, just like we have tools to help us do what we have to do. Believe me, they have the tools, or at least the ability of having the tools to achieve their goal. And again, whether it's money or political, at this point, the fact that our explosives are being used is really our main concern. This was just a quick Google search and a screenshot that I did. I just put in the Google search how to make ANFO, and there's no shortage. There's also absolutely no shortage of documented cases where they've confirmed that the internet was used to acquire the skills required to either create a suicide vest or detonator or any other a part that needed to be done to create the explosive device. As far as the explosives go, we're just going to go over some general components
of what you need to create explosives. Again, we're not looking to make any of you out there an expert on explosives. We just think that they're, at this point, with the prevalent use of explosives, that almost everybody in the field needs to have at least awareness level training and some of the signs to look for. And again, I'll just mention one more time that at any time that you see any signs or any possibility of the use of explosives, obviously that has to be relayed back. And if you have the opportunity, it's not a hostage situation, or time is not sensitive, and you can get the bomb techs out there to take care of it, of course, that would be the best course of action. Now, in order to create an explosive device, you basically need three elements. You need some explosive material. Again, this could be improvised, or it could be commercial or military grade. You're going to need some kind of mechanism. Mechanism could be low-tech, can be high-tech, could be a clothespin, could be a cell phone, and anything in between. And that's just the creativity of the mechanism you need to achieve what you're trying to achieve. As far as the detonators go, there's plenty of commercially available detonators, but then again, they can be improvised. And today we're going to deal more with the improvised explosives and more with the improvised detonator than we are about the commercially available products. In this particular case, I also mentioned the three elements. Everybody knows that one of the biggest factors and one of the biggest concerns the TSA actually has, and everybody's heard this, where, you know, the concern is that one person has the explosive material, the other person has a mechanism, the other person has a detonator. They all meet in the bathroom and they put together an explosive device. So you can say the same way that TSA is really looking not for a completed explosive device, but the components that could lead up to that situation. I think all of us should have that in mind, because if you do enter a house or a business, or you're doing an investigation and may only find one of the three components, it still may be an important piece of information in the process of putting together a whole explosive device. These are some of the improvised materials that are available. The way I usually explain improvised materials is that normally improvised materials are materials that were created for abiding citizens to be able to do legal activities, and unfortunately then they're used to and put together with other materials that are available to create an explosive device. That said, one of the biggest problems with improvised explosives is the fact that they're, like we say, they're either unstable or they're really unstable, as compared to the commercially available or military grade explosives, which were designed as an explosive material, and we're done under very strict rules in a factory, as compared to when you're dealing with improvised explosives, there's really no supervision, and they're done in somebody's lab or home or basement or warehouse, and that actually creates more problems for us because of the instability of the product and the lack of knowing exactly what we're dealing with at any one time. So just a quick list: gunpowder, potassium chloride, sodium chloride, urea, ANFO, and TATP, and I'll go into each of them in just a little bit of detail. I bring this up. TNT is not an improvised explosive material, but kind of the way they're finding them within these landmines, you could say it's an improvised ways of finding the material. And I mentioned this, I don't know if everybody recalls, but a while back when Princess Di was alive, one of her biggest charities and goals was working with the international campaign to ban landmines, trying to eradicate these because so many children were losing limbs around the world, and unfortunately landmines are still a tremendous problem around the world. And if you have any questions about that, I'm sure John from NITEC would be glad to answer them, but that's still a problem and still a major source of TNT that's being used for all kinds of roadside bombs, suicide terror, vests, etc. Okay, a little bit about black powder. I said I'd go over them, just one at a time. Black powder, anybody who's a hunter out there, anybody who makes their own rounds knows that they can get black powder anywhere. I can pick it up at, Bass Pro Shops and a bunch of other sporting goods places. I have no problem buying black powder anywhere I go across the country when we go ahead and make our own pyrotechnic devices for our training. Potassium chloride and sodium chloride, again, we're looking at commercially used product. Potassium chloride was mainly designed for creating blasting caps. It's also used in fireworks. There has been a tremendous amount of restrictions put on this product, but then again, in small quantities, any of these products, I believe, can be easily attainable. Then again, if you go somewhere and try to buy a whole truckload of fertilizer after everything we know, that may be a problem, but if you collect it little by little, I think that there is rather easy access, so it's something to keep in mind. Again, this is another fertilizer. Effects equivalent to TNT, so these improvised explosives are becoming stronger and stronger, of major concern. We know that this was part of the vehicle-borne or truck bomb that was used in the '93 attack on the Twin Towers, and then ANFO, which is ammonium nitrate fuel oil, was used in Oklahoma. And again, there is no shortage of information on the internet on how you can make these products. This is the acetone and peroxide, and interestingly enough, tomorrow is the sentencing of the terrorist that was purchasing these products in Denver at beauty salons and was planning an attack in New York City. So again, commercially available products that have a legal use being used and put together to create improvised explosive devices. This picture I just wanted to show to see that the ingenuity of the terrorists or the criminals or the people that are putting together pipe bombs in this case. They're using whatever materials they find available. You can see how they've etched the pipe in order to get the most damage and fragmentation, and you'll usually find that they'll try to improvise with whatever materials are available in the area that they're in. We'll talk a little bit about mechanisms. So you have to have explosive material. You also have to have some kind of mechanism. Some of the categories are time delay mechanisms. They can also be command detonated. And there could also be a booby trap, victim initiated. The important thing about this to understand about mechanisms is that they can be combined, so you're not only looking for one mechanism, an explosive device. For example, you could have a suicide terrorist that has a traditional plunger switch, but that particular device could also be detonated by cell phone. So you could have different ways. You could also have a time delay mechanism that no matter what happens, if it didn't work out for the terrorist, that the delay was going to make it explode in any case. So you need to keep in mind that you can have a booby trap and a time delay and different combinations of these, so you may have more than one mechanism. So again, if you have a suicide terrorist and the suicide terrorist has been shot, but the actual vest is still intact, you still have to keep in mind the possibility of a remote detonation on that explosive device. This is just basic circuitry, and really to show the simplicity, I'm the one that's put together all the pyrotechnic devices for all the IED mitigation courses that we put together, so I can tell you that there's not a whole lot to this. In this particular case, what you're really looking at is a bomb that's already exploded. You're looking at explosive material, again, whether it's improvised or military grade, 9-volt battery in this case. And what we're just showing you here is that obviously both wires connected, you're looking at the explosive that's already been detonated, but if you can go ahead and sever one of the wires, at that point you can really put whatever mechanism your imagination can think of. This can be something as simple as a clothespin, and like I said, more detailed things like motion detectors, for example, which are very difficult to defeat, or cellular phones, and any other mechanism. I show this picture because of the ingenuity of the terrorists that put these things together. In this particular case, they're just using a traditional analog watch. What they do here is actually they take the face off the watch, they put a piece of Scotch tape on the face of the watch, which becomes an insulator. They put a hole on the crystal, and when they feed the wire through the crystal, obviously it's insulated by the Scotch tape that's on the watch, and the body of the watch is what you could say basically grounded, so when the hand hits the wire, the explosive goes off. Not as accurate as a digital device, but it does function. This is just one of potentially thousands of different types of mechanical timers. I mean, you can do something as simple as go to a junkyard and get a countdown timer from an old dryer. And again, you know, Radio Shack has no shortage of different timers and mechanical timers, and there are all kinds of different types. So again, it's just whatever your imagination calls for. This is a digital model. We actually use one very similar to this one that we purchased at Radio Shack, not as a plug-in Radio Shack, but they were very kind to open it up for us and show us exactly how it works. So that was very good. In this particular case, it could be a multiple mechanism, maybe, you know, maybe an on and off button for activation, but we believe in this particular case what they're trying to do is using the switch as an arming switch, because one of the problems they were having earlier with the engineers and the suicide bombers was the fact that the suicide bombers weren't happy that they were having a lot of work accidents. So they became a lot better in having the actual suicide terrorists feel comfortable about the fact that they could arm and disarm the device, and they could arm it when they get to their target, because again, their objective was to fulfill their mission and not to have a problem before they get to the target. So this could be the case in this particular picture. Plenty of products are available on the market. Model airplane radio control materials are available everywhere, and again, these have limitations of distance, but they're very accurate with short distance, a lot more accurate than a cell phone, because you can get instantaneous results. So something like this would be good for trying to hit a convoy or something where you need an immediate reaction, obviously if you're within the vicinity. This particular case, and I mentioned this just because you never know exactly who may be carrying a bomb. This is a case that happened in a fuel storage area just outside of Tel Aviv, Israel. Since then, the facility's been moved, but in this particular case, a bomb was put under this fuel truck, and the gentleman driving the truck, who had perfectly good credentials to get into the fuel depot, did not know he was carrying the explosive device. There's also a very famous case, the Anne Marie Murphy case, that you could look up, but it's a very interesting case about how Israeli El Al security was able, just by asking questions, determine that a female passenger, that something didn't look right, and she didn't know she was carrying a bomb, and they were able to save an aircraft for being blown up at a certain altitude because they were able to catch the bomber that didn't know they were a bomber. Again, your traditional push-button switch. I do get a lot of questions when we provide these training programs across the country about the dead man switches, and as much as we know and as much as we've been trying to find out as much as we can, we don't believe that they're using the dead man switches for a lot of reasons. One of them was what I said before about them being able to feel cool and collective and comfortable that they can reach their mission, and it's hard enough to do that without having to worry to let go of a switch, so that we don't believe that's a common thing if it's been used at all, for that matter. Detonators are an important part. Years ago, the detonators were actually the most difficult part to resolve. It's getting easier to find detonators. These are commercially available detonators. Again, there are controls on detonators, but then again, one missing or two missing detonators might not be enough for it to be caught. Even if you can't get a commercially available detonator, you can make one. This is just one of many ways to make a home-end detonator. In this particular case, what they're doing is they're taking a flashlight bulb. Obviously, what you want to do is remove the glass portion, leave the element intact, have some explosive material, and put it all together. Obviously, put the light bulb with the explosive material inside a larger part of explosive material, and you have a homemade detonator. Now we're actually using a lot of commercial pyrotechnic devices at our training. Makes my life a little easier, but when we started, I was making the devices. I'll just give you an idea of how easy it is. Every town that I arrived in across the country, and that's a lot of them, I've been to most of them, we would pick up black powder, as I mentioned, at any sporting goods store. We'd go by drugstores like CVS and pick up from the photo area 35 millimeter film canisters. We'd fill those with black powder. We'd go to Walmart and buy the igniters for the Estes rockets. We put it all together, used duct tape, and created small explosive devices. We used 20 or 30 throughout a 4-day training, and we would do that as prep the day before at pretty much anywhere. The only stop I didn't have to make was Home Depot because I didn't really want a real pipe and nails, but that's probably the only thing that would have been missing as far as creating a quick explosive device. This is, just to give you an idea, this is a picture of one of our instructors at LA Police SWAT, and he's one of our instructors, and this is an IED that we created going off in a hallway. And what I originally thought was, I'll say his name is Joe, what I originally thought was that he was actually initiating the device in his hand there, but I later found out that he was texting his wife. So that's what we got. This is an explosive device going off at the end of a hall. This is actually from a training we recently just completed in St. Louis. And again, we incorporate explosives within our training programs to make sure that we teach them what they need to do. This is just a good picture. Again, that was from our training in St. Louis that I put up there. And basically, that's a program that I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, pass them through electronically, and Lily here at the office will take a look at them. And lastly, before I call Henry back, I do want to mention that as we provide our trainings across the country, and for all you guys that have been to our trainings, you know that we hand out materials for the Epilepsy Foundation. We do this because we believe in this project. We're partnered up with the Epilepsy Foundation because it's important that first responders are aware of the signs of seizures, and that's very important not only for your own safety but for the safety of the public as well. So we would ask, there's no charge, it's free, it's a very short program. You can go to the Epilepsy Foundation website and they'll gladly help you, send you DVDs, materials, whatever you need. 30 to 40 minutes per officer or per first responder is all you need to know, and you know, hopefully that could save lives. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for registering today, and obviously we're available, you know, 24/7 here for any questions you have about any of our programs. I want to thank John with NITEC to making it possible, the Homeland Security Network, and I'll pass it back to Henry now.
So, thank you. That was really excellent. Can everybody hear me well? I heard there were some problems with my mic on the first go-around. Anybody hear me?
I hear you, Henry. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much. That was excellent. I want to talk a little bit about SSI, and thank you for attending. Tell you that we do have a program of visits to key sites in Israel to explore how Israelis under constant threat from this type of weapon have managed to bring down terrorist events to insignificant amounts. There was one last year, none the year before, maybe one. So we're looking at a situation that in actually 2003 was quite incredible. There were sometimes 60 different attacks in 1 month, 13 suicide terrorists. So I take people there and we go through everything. It's a very professional visit. Unlike other organizations, there are no politics involved here. What we're looking to do is find Homeland Security in Israel and look at it and see what's applicable. We go to infrastructure, we go to schools, we go to universities, we look at VIP protection, and mall and retail, and government buildings, everything you can imagine, where we speak to people at the highest levels, including the Israeli police and many of the government people that cooperate with our trip. And as far as I know, we're the only company that has taken close to 20 missions to Israel with about 400 people. So we're very gratified by the people that have come with us and have come back and formed a kind of cadre around this country of proactive, knowledge-based individuals that know a lot more about the threat from terror. I also want to point out that we do have products available for making your defenses and your perimeters more secure. We have developed with a company in Israel the Portable Vehicle Barrier, PVB. This is a modular portable barrier that can be used anywhere. It can be used to cut off a road that leads to a sporting event and was being used for that at one of the biggest sporting events in the country recently. It can be used by stadiums. It can be used to protect a parade. What it does is, although each unit weighs 65 pounds, 2 people can block a road in about 20 minutes. It goes down and it takes the vehicle's forward momentum to lift the vehicle up in the air, as you can see on the slide there. And you're certainly welcome to visit our page at the www.ssipvb.com and take a look at the portable vehicle barrier, because we're selling it everywhere. We're even exporting it. And most importantly, it's U.S. made. It's made in the USA. It's a rare deal these days, but it's a much better product because it is. So anyone that wants further information on that, please do get in touch with us. I want to thank everybody. And what we're going to do is, because we've got so many questions, I'm going to read just one or two of these questions, and then we'll let Saul go because I know he's very busy. Are you still there, Saul? He may have gone because he was committed to another 2 programs. Let's do this. We'll answer questions in writing for you, and we'll get those answers for you. So I want to thank you very much for taking part in the webinar. We look forward to seeing you again. This is Henry Morgenstern for SSI and the Homeland Security Network. Thank you.